Hello, one and all, and welcome to Creative Spark, my YouTube show where I talk to cool people about the cool things that they are doing. With me today is the world of fitness's greatest friend and a man who always has a mug, Hampton from Hybrid Calisthenics.
Great to see you, Jason. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good, thank you. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. Thank you for having me.
It's
Glad to finally get going.
I appreciate you
Yeah,
making time for it.
of course, of course.
Yeah, so we're gonna. I want you to cast your mind back, which is always fun, to what prompted the beginning of hybrid calisthenics, basically.
Oh yeah, of course. And just to talk to the audience a bit, I did miss Jason a couple times before this, which is why I'm glad that we finally made it happen. But it cast my mind back a little bit further, more than those few weeks, which is always a challenge for me. I started Hybrid Calisthenics. Really, it started as a blog. I'll give you the summarized version because I've done this before, and I recognize that I can go on for like 20, 30 minutes. And when the podcast for 50 minutes, like you basically get two questions, one in the beginning and one in the middle. It started as a blog in 2018 because someone told me the idea. Really, like it's pretty easy for me to say I didn't start to make money now,
Mm.
but at the time, like really, I thought about it, and I did start it as a way to make some side income, not
Mhm.
as a way to get rich quick or really even get rich. It was just like, cool, I can start a blog and write and and then like run ads and I could make money from that. It's crazy, so there was a lot of stuff I wanted to say and write down. Some people told me about this idea called niche blogs. I was like, I'll look into that. So I was like, well, what are some topics? And that's when I first came up with the idea of hybrid calisthenics. A couple years down the road, my mom got sick. I had to take, not even that, that later that year, my mom got sick. I had to take care of her for a few years and I got sidetracked. And then later in 2020, um, I was like, well, these medical bills are getting kind of expensive because I was paying them for her and I had to be with her full time. So I had to work from home. So it wasn't like work from home luxury. This is work
Yeah.
from home only place I can work. And I was like, and someone said, well, you should try doing the hybrid calisthenics thing. And I'm like, sure. I started watching videos about it, reading things about it. And I'm not sure what exactly it was, but I was watching videos about it. And there was just a change in the discussion points away from blogs to the point, which thankfully nowadays that's become that industry has really changed
Mm.
because you used to Google something. And if you're like, my motorcycle, this model is having an issue, and Google would rely on a lot of niche blog articles, and
Mm.
then they pull those up, and you could see those. Nowadays, with AI and Quora and Reddit, it's become a different thing now.
Yeah.
And so someone was like, why don't you make video content? I was like, and that was never really something I struggled with. I knew it could take a while, so I made a few videos, and I started from there, and I kept going.
Was there a point at which you realized it wasn't just going to be like an attempt? It had, like, you'd gotten to a point where you were making it an actual thing.
See, that's an interesting question because there's a not to say that I'm any great success, but there's a saying I like about successful people, and it was like smart enough to figure it out, dumb enough to believe in yourself. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And once again, I don't consider myself really that far. We're a few years into it, but um, that I feel like that describes me in a lot of endeavors, right? So I like figuring it out, and I am dumb enough to believe in myself. And that it's funny because I made a video a couple of days ago. It's called "Finding Your Purpose," and it's going on my Coffee with Hampton channel. And I talk about how it was around New Year's about 5 years ago. I didn't like it wasn't a New Year's resolution. It
Mm.
happened to coincide around New Year's, where I was feeling very inspired. I had a lot of like ideas that day. I felt very good about this new thing I was trying. So it really started to become a real thing around then, I would say, because I felt so. It really felt like it resonated with me. It's like I
Mm.
really want to do this. I'm finally going down this path that I think it's like everyone goes to this idea of like, well, like first you go, you're going to grade school. Like you don't really choose what you're doing then. Okay, cool. Then you go to college, and then after college, you can start to go into your job. But it
Mm.
gets a little bit dicier because there's all these paths you can take, and then you're like, wait a second, I'm not doing what I'm meant to do. What's going on? And everyone kind of has to figure it out. And some people are lucky enough to be born on this is the path, then they can
Mm.
achieve great heights. And I kind of had that, but different things happen. I'm like, well, what am I going to do? So I felt really good about it early on. A few days in, within a few days. My first video got 0 views, by the way. So like it's like despite like to contrast my my unrealistic optimism that I had then, but like someone was like, yeah, go on TikTok, all right, and do a video, and I was like, TikTok. I talked to my girlfriend at the time, now wife. I said, what's TikTok? And she's like, oh, it's like, like I knew what it was, but I was like dancing. I was like, do I have to dance? Like I have like very basic dance moves where I just go like,
Yep.
I can bob to the rhythm, right? And and uh, I made a video. It was me doing handstand push-ups, and then they're like, select a song, and I chose "Take on Me" by ABBA. Not ABBA, AHA, right? And it got 0 views, and like I couldn't even say, "Oh no, I did the video wrong," because it got 0 views because I was like, you have no samples to work with.
Yeah.
My third video got 100. I was like, oh, cool. Right. Like these are big numbers for someone starting out. Like when I get 100, I'm like, that's huge. And my fifth video got like 3 million. Right. So I was, but so it's interesting. It was around then. So there really wasn't like a binary switching point. So it started off strong with the optimism. Even the 0 views, I'm like, I'll keep posting on Facebook, which is my main platform at the time, and then YouTube. I started January 3rd, I believe. And then TikTok, I was just posting everywhere, and it was only like 20, 30 minutes a day. And see, that sounds like a big figure, right? So it's like I got 3 million views, but it really doesn't do anything. That's an interesting thing. Like we're conflating like email ideas of numbers with like TikTok numbers, which are different. Because there's a lot of people who can go, like my friend, her engagement video, her proposal video, where her I think now husband proposed to her on this deck. It got like 60 million views. Which like it took me like a while to get that in total. I don't think I've had a video. She's done better on that video on TikTok than I have in like any single video. Right. I think I've got like 10 million, but not 60 million. It was huge. Right. But that's not what she does for a living. Right. And nor does she want to. Right. It's a different thing. And I hope she's very, very happily married. But what I really discovered then was not only do you have to have a video that people find viral, but you also have to connect parts of your personality in there, and things that if you want to show this to 5 million people, if you could like choose that, is it good enough and resonate with you enough that you want to spread it to the world? So if it's really stupid and it goes viral, like, man, like delete, right? Delete, like change the draft and then draft to trash, right? It's like we're not gonna have that anymore. And that does happen to a degree, to where I'm like, because if you make a video every day, you say something every day. I'm like, that's the thing that went viral. I'm like, I think about it for a couple of days. I'm like, man, okay, we'll keep that one. But like that one, we're not gonna have. And I even just privated a video that I made a couple of years ago, a few days ago, where I was just like, this no longer really represents. And it's not like it wasn't views on like society.
Yeah,
it was views on like on fitness stuff. Where I'm like, actually, I mind on that. So I changed my mind. Right. So it's been a journey. And then just to fast forward a little bit, a few months in, we started to get a little bit more traction. Right. I had a couple of videos that didn't do quite as well, but it was this idea of like instant. My first video where I got some followers that people wanted to comment and give me ideas and tell me what they like and dislike. People talk about the views and the likes, and that's cool. Having instantaneous feedback, having that feedback really helps me. When they're like, I like this, I don't like this. I'm like, cool. Right. And now I can release almost anything. I have the tremendous blessing of releasing anything and have people comment on it almost immediately, which is something that I don't want to take for granted. So it kind of spiraled, not spiraled, but it kind of went up from there. And it was nice. It was nice.
At what point did you find yourself looking to bring more people into Hybrid Calisthenics because you realized that you couldn't do it on your own anymore?
So like team members.
Yeah.
Early on, it was about later that same year. So it was late 2020. So 2020 was a big year in the sense that a lot of different things happened. So I had my first business partnership, and the ending of that business partnership, I had my first viral video. I met a lot of cool people that I still talk to this day. But it was around the end of 2020 um, when I decided that I wanted to. Well, I've been deciding for a while that I wanted to run my own e-commerce store. So I needed someone to fulfill that. So have you ever done any e-commerce or
I've not done
Shopify?
any,
Things
but
like
I write about some stuff like that, so I'm
Okay,
aware of it.
so
Yeah.
so it's interesting, right? Because at the time, so you hear about ads about things like I think the one before that was like big commerce
Mm.
and then Shopify and it's like online business and it's like cool. So kind of in people's minds of how it works is how like drop shipping actually works.
Yeah.
So it's like you spin it up and it's like business simulator, but in real life,
Yeah.
right? It's like sell, that's cool. But what you find when you do it, like regardless how good their software is, you have to ship it yourself.
Mm.
Which makes sense, right? Like you think about it a little bit, but I think that surprises a lot of people. So I was like, I want to sell fitness equipment.
Mm.
I want to make or source high quality fitness equipment, and I want to sell it. What but I don't. I didn't have the time, or it would have been difficult to sit down for hours and label it. I didn't quite understand it, so I conscripted a friend of mine to do that with me, right? And she still works with us.
That's a great,
To this day.
great choice of word there. Conscripted.
Right. Well, we sat down over a pizza, and I was like, "This is what we're doing," right? But I really did. Yeah, and it's funny, but I really did quite learn that. I've learned so many things since 2020 because I foolishly thought that I was like, okay, here's the brand. You can put like show me the product, find it. You can make it. You can get a friend to design it, and we can put a name on it, and we can turn this into a store, right? We can do this. And I foolishly thought at the time that just everybody wanted to do that, and really just had the desire to do that
Mm.
because it really takes a special kind of person, not to say good or bad, to want to run with that. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, so really the process, behind my diluted optimism that I had to learn was that there really was a lot more stuff that worked a lot less automatically than I thought.
Mm.
I never really thought it was like simple, but I just like I was happy to do it.
Yeah.
Right. I was like, well, try it this way. And it's like, oh, that it's like you're actually very bad at that. I'm like, interesting. It's like it's like you actually aren't you're not gonna be able to afford that for 3 years. I'm like, interesting.
I
Okay,
see.
good to know. Right. But so it's an interesting thing where I think a big key part, right, just to impart it to the listeners, if it can help, because I try to help with these conversations, is really that thing of having some realistic optimism to where you're not the person that can't sing that tells everyone they're going on American Idol
Mhm.
or The Voice or things like that. It's and not to because it's hard, it's situational. Not to say that person has no chance because you can learn to sing.
Mm.
You can. Like that was a thing that's kind of confusing, but you can learn to sing unless you have some fairly rare combinations of medical conditions to where you cannot hear any kind of pitch, right? And even then, you might not really like music. So, but you want to be the person who kind of, I think if you feel good about something, right, and you enjoy the process of doing it,
Mm.
and you are okay with trying, even if it doesn't really end up going to massive success right away, you can really go quite far with just that,
Mm.
whether good or bad, right? You can use that for good things, you can use that for bad things.
Yeah.
I encourage people to use it for good things. So,
Ideally. Along with the things that you sell, you also give away a lot of programs. A lot of the programs that
yes,
you have on the website are free.
right.
Was that an intentional thing to help kind of draw people into hybrid calisthenics, or is that just something you're doing like genuine is a good thing?
Oh, interesting. So, your audience, how would you describe your audience? Is it like business focused or
My
what?
audience is there's a lot of D&D people because I interview a lot of Dungeons and
Okay,
Dragons
cool,
creators. So it's a real mix
cool.
of, and I'm in the gaming and
Okay, I get it.
TTRPG
Yeah.
space. It's a weird. There
Cool,
are some
cool.
people.
Right. So this will so like that helps me phrase my answer because there's different things that are helpful to different people. By the way, one of my favorite series to watch online was One Piece D&D. Right, run by Daniel Rustage. Right, I loved it. It was super entertaining when it was going on. They're doing a sequel now, but it was great. So I haven't actually I played D&D like 2 times, but I've listened to like 150 hours. I know that's not a whole lot, but like for someone who only played twice
It's
of
enough.
D&D, yeah, it's a decent amount. Yeah, it's a decent amount, and I was enthralled by it the whole time. But the reason why I made it free, because in business, there's the idea like, oh, give things for free, and then people can, buy other stuff. But I really didn't have that much to buy. I had like one gym ring product, right?
Yeah.
Which I use. I was like, that's cool, right? But I also showed people how to use it for free. At the time, so this is why like year one, year two, I would have felt different than I feel now. Because at the time, I always like thought I tried to think long and hard about it for what I want to charge for things. And when I was making the routine, which took quite a while to make, I was like, how much should I charge for this? And eventually, like the thing that resonated most with me was $0. Right. And it was not a way to bring people in necessarily. I guess you could say make it more accessible to people, right? Because I want fitness to be available to people.
Yeah.
And really, I can't charge like something if anyone watching this wants to do something in calisthenics, something you realize is you can't charge people for gravity, right? Gravity is, it's kind of free, right? And their body is attached to them, right? And I haven't, people haven't found a way to charge people for their own bodies, unless you really get into it. But they you kind of have to give people the information, and they do with it what they will, right? So that's what I felt most normal about. And at the time, I had this reputation even before I did Hybrid Calisthenics, where I wanted to do a lot of things for free. And people are like, well, you're not a very good businessman. I'm like, man, that's something I need to work on. I need to like get better at asking for money. So like when you go to business, you kind of like online content creator or just like selling pies locally. A lot of people have this to where like, I don't really want to charge for it. It's like, I'll give you like $5. Everyone kind of has that. I was like, I have to work through it. What I actually found a few years down the line is the reason I didn't feel comfortable charging for it is because in my mind, I was not good enough. Right. And I don't mean that in kind of like a low self-esteem way. I mean, I want to build more, and I knew I could make it better. Right. And after I made it better, and after I give different options, then hey, we can release this thing on the side. Hey, here's the subscription if you want it. Right. And if you want it, like something I routinely like is I like to give people a free version of it. So the book that we have, right? That's the book. I'm getting off a little bit of a cough. But the book that we have, which a lot of people have read it. I'm really thankful for that. The entire text of that we sold is available online, right? And like that was not a secret. That's on the product page. I'm like, if you want a free version of this, you can actually watch the videos and everything on the website, and people still buy it, right? And so I like to offer a free version. It's like, hey, have this if you want, but if you want to buy this, then you have it, which is really how I think ideally people buying something, people looking into something, they be aware of those things anyway, right? And it's true because you have that anyway. You have the option for that. I might as well let you know. So it's like, hey, if you want this gym ring, you can buy it, or I can show you how to make your own, right? And that always felt more comfortable for me because I didn't feel like I was hiding something from anyone. When I used to make websites for people, I used to say, hey, because there's a difference between I'm like, I'm going to charge $800 for a website, which is really not a whole lot for a website. But then people were like, well, I don't really want it to be customized. And they basically just wanted something like in WordPress or Squarespace. I'm like, well, I can make that a lot easier. Right. So I was like, well, it's like, well, make me one. I'm like, well, I feel bad charging $800 for this. Because it's one thing when it's a Fred and one thing when I'm just like listing out a price. But like, how many websites do you have to make a month to make a living for like a family of 5? Yeah. Right. So I'm like, there's different perspectives on it. But at the time, I was single and I didn't really have I was trying to make money, but I had a little bit more freedom there. So I tell my friends, like, no, I'll just show you how to make it. And then we sit down and 30 minutes in, I'm like, do this, click and drag, do this. And they'd be like, you know what? I'll just give you the money. I'm like, but but you only have like 2 or 3 more hours and you'll understand this. Right. And they didn't want to understand it. So I was like, interesting. So you show people the process that goes into it. This was not some kind of like Machiavellian scheme where I was like, hey, I'll show you this. I was just like, no, I'll show you this. So then this can save you money. They're like, no, I don't want to know any of that. You just do it. Here's my credit card. Right. And I'm like, interesting. So like, that was really the beginning of me understanding this, like, I don't need to hide the secret sauce, at least with what I'm doing. Maybe if you have a secret sauce, keep it secret, but like, I'll just tell you what it is. Right. And then you can decide whether or not you want to get it from me, get it from someone else. Right. Or make it yourself. Right. And I think people should have the option for that. So that really was like a guiding business and moral principle that I liked early on.
Very cool. Are you happy with where hybrid calisthenics is at the moment, or are you aiming for more or different things in the future?
So interesting question. So it's kind of just like if someone, I think of things as a journey,
Mm.
right? So let's say that you were, where are you located? You don't like, not exact, like
England.
England. Okay, let's say you're on a flight from England to America, right? So that's where I am, right? You're flying there, and about halfway through the flight, or like at some point through the flight, you say, "Well, are you happy with where you are right now?" Right, and that's similar to how I think of it. It's like I actually am, right. I wouldn't be happy if you just dropped me into the ocean right now, but but I'm happy with how the journey is going, or
Mm.
I'm okay with how the journey is going. Now, keep in mind, flights. Anyone who's flown before, there's probably delays. There's probably things that you forgot, and things you, oh man, I should have brought that. I should have packed this instead. So like all kind of things that go into traveling. So that's part of the metaphors. Like there are things I wish I would have done differently. I am happy with. I feel blessed to be able to do it.
Mm.
But for me, part of the journey and part of the situation is the forward momentum, right? So like there comes a point when I'm building something where at first I'm just happy to do it, and that's cool. Like I like to imagine that I would do it to some degree, regardless of what I ended up doing in my life. But if you want to do something full time and spend a lot of time on it, as I'm sure you're aware, you have to have some way to make an income from it,
Mhm.
right? And that's balanced with like my weird obscure like weird ideas on business, right? Where I want to do stuff for free, so I'm like, man, it's gonna take a little bit of a while. So we have like donations and stuff, but early on, it's like you want to do. I was like, well, it'd be cool if I could make minimum wage doing this, right? And that's a threshold for a lot of people, because it's like I have now traded some, like I'm now able to do something that I enjoy and
Yeah.
choose to do and would do for free for the amount that's like the minimum payment that a worker would get working in this area. Cool. Um, you and that's great. When I hit that, I was like, "Whoa, this is great! This is the best thing ever." Hashtag blessed. But when I was like, "Hang on, if I want to marry my girlfriend, fiance, and then wife,
Mm.
and then I want to take care of family, and there's all these things I want to do, I might need to make more than minimum wage." Right. Just like, even if I can live on it, it's like, well, I want to be able to do things for other people, and I want to build things for other people. And I need to bring people in. Like the person I brought in, you have to pay them.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, so that was not something I was surprised about, but it is something that's like, once you have to pay people, then you're like, then it's a different perspective. It's like, well, I do need to take some money because I need to pay them.
Yeah.
So I'm like, interesting. Um, well, we can do that then. And I think there is a point beyond that where you say, well, now I'm making an average wage from there, right? And it's like, okay, cool. But now I need to make enough to pay other people. So like that number keeps going up. But my point is that I think there's like a settling point that kind of settles in where it's like, okay, you kind of understand where things are going.
Mm.
It's probably not going to shoot up next month, and it's probably not going to die next month.
Yep.
2 months away, no guarantees. But next month, we're okay. Right. Around that point, you get this kind of perspective towards like, okay, cool. Now I can kind of sustain doing different things in this thing that I've kind of built. What do I want to do? Right. And like, I think you can see from different business people and content creators and different individuals around the world of how they choose to answer that question. Some choose just to relax. And by the way, like, no judgment here, because I don't know your life, right? Like you could have worked very hard.
Mm-hmm.
Some people just want to relax, right? It's like I have my passive income making the equivalent of $5,000 a month. That's enough for me to live on. I don't need a whole lot. I have a house. I have a family. Done. That's awesome.
Yep.
Right? You can do that. Some are like, well, I just want to keep doing what I do, and they keep doing it. Some people who do videos and stuff, they get really good. So I want to do cool projects.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that is a form of like, well, what do I want to build now?
Yeah.
Right. That is a consistent question I'm trying to answer, which may change over time, which is, after we get to where the crew is no longer starving and in danger, and the ship is kind of just like sailing, where do we want to go? And more importantly, and a little bit more detailed, what do we want to build for other people?
Mm.
Right? Because we're all doing this thing.
Mm-hmm.
What are we spending our time on? There's different things we can do to make money. what do we want to build? So like, and what this could be is something that you're familiar with is writing, right? So I could write a book, I could write an article, I can write something, hopefully things that bring value to other people and enrich people's lives, right? And like, it's a relatively easy thing to build compared to like a car or a robot, right? Is that but not necessarily as helpful, right? So like a robot, I don't know how much that can help someone depending on the robot, but an article can change someone's life, right? So that's what we're trying to do right now. It's like the things that we're able to build and do that. But beyond that, we can also build technology for building an app, right? And I want to do like the vast majority of it for free. That's a very expensive endeavor for people to consider software. It's a very expensive endeavor. It's a story for a separate time, perhaps. But you see what I'm saying? It's like now we have this thing, this opportunity. What do we want to build within that? And it's like you kind of get a blank canvas, which can be inspiring, but also terrifying because what do you want to build now that you're able to do this? And you can build towards something. You can build, hey, maybe I can build a team, offer this as a service. You can build a business, which makes a ton of money if that's what you want to do. Or you can try to solve, some environmental problem over in New Zealand, right? Like these are all things that you can build towards. So it's more just like larger and larger scale problem solving and what you want to build and provide. It is where my headspace is right now. And like this might be hard for people who don't know me, but I don't say that with any sense of like grandiosity, right? Like I don't think like, oh, I'm so amazing. It's my like I know that there's a chance like I don't really build anything that really helps anyone to any huge extent, but I'm trying to. That's the idea. Like it's the pursuit of that. Like I don't think like I'm. This article is probably not going to save humanity, probably not, right? But I want to build things that help other people. So it's like whatever skill that is, I want to try to do it.
Do you think that kind of path for you means that you will stick with hybrid calisthenics?
I think I will. Yes, good question. I think I will keep hybrid calisthenics as a fitness thing, right? Because there are many things that I like, and there's many things that I want, because it meets the criteria, right? It's like something I like, something that I have knowledge in, and something that people need, right? So that's something, and for business, something that you can make a living doing, right? So, and some other criteria. So I want to keep that going, but what I recognize is, there's also other things I want to do beyond fitness, right? And this is interesting because in terms of pure growth and the types of podcasts that would be on and everything, you usually get more if you go all in on one thing. Or I won't say usually, but it's like if I spent all my time just making videos, we'd have a lot of interesting videos right now.
Yeah.
But what I found is there's like fitness is cool, but there's also other stuff that people need in their lives, right? So something that some younger viewers sometimes that will talk to me, and they're teenagers and they're some of them are pretty honest with what they're saying, and they're like, "Well, like I'm just disappointed that you used to be all about calisthenics, and now you're doing all this like this stuff." And that's cool. I might have felt similarly at 19. I might have felt similarly at 17, right? And like if they don't ever change their mind, that's cool. Maybe calisthenics is your calling. You're going to be one of the best calisthenics athletes in the world. That's great. For me, that's not what I want to do. That there was like I want to take care of family, right? What I've recognized that a lot of people struggle with, I don't like mental health is kind of a very important, but also people use as kind of a buzzword. But I think people struggle with their mindset and who they're listening to now, right? So like there is an undertone of, and within fitness, of self-improvement, right? But then you look into like self-improvement content creators and self-improvement content out there, and in my opinion, you get a mixed bag. Some people say the whole thing's bad, but in my opinion, it's a mixed bag. So there's some people who have helped me. Like I can't speak to like the verifiability of their claims or anything, but they have helped me, right? Changed my life, right? That they would not call themselves self-improvement people, right? There's like different people in fields of business, art, and everything, but they can help people. And I think there's instead of self-improvement, I would call like personal development. This idea of mindset and how we can see the world and what does it mean to be a good person? What does it mean to be, some like what should we strive to be? Right. And it's a question people answer in different ways, and that's one way where I want to contribute to the conversation. Right. Because it's funny. There's a lot of younger men in fitness. Right. And the things they tell me they want, the things they think they need in order to be successful. I'm like, man, that's just not true. right? And they don't believe me, right? They're like,
Yeah.
no, if you have money, if I had money, I would solve all my issues. If I had a woman, I would have all my issues.
Yeah.
If I had fame, right? And I was like, dude, I have some money. I'm married, and like I don't know about fame, but I have like a decent amount of followers on the internet, right? And I'm telling you that's not it, right? And so they're, and they look at me, they go, no. I'm like, so it's interesting that that's something that I think we can. It's a key part of their life,
Mm.
right? Even more so than fitness, because fitness is cool, but like there's physical health, there's mental health, like maybe like emotional, spiritual, and psychological health, right? That I think we can contribute to and help people. If the goal really is to help people thrive and live their best life, we can go beyond fitness in that sense.
Do you feel as though those viewpoints make you almost alienated to the world of fitness, which does tend to be fairly, and I say this as someone who's a personal trainer full time for 7 years,
Okay.
can be fairly overly masculine and a little toxic?
So it's interesting. So I would say yes, but not in a way where I ever really feel the negative side effects of it, right? Because when I started doing hybrid calisthenics, I I didn't do any. How should I put it? If I had like seriously researched it the way that I would take things seriously now, and like look at the field, look at how other people are doing it, I probably would have created quite a different um format
Yeah.
of video. Right. So like it's one of those things that's part of my diluted optimism is I was unaware of how things were.
Yeah.
I didn't know fitness was considered toxic. Right. I like it was it's not part of my terminology at the time. So I think it would alienate certain people, but I am of the mindset right now that I will speak what I would consider to be the truth.
Mhm.
Right. This is what I believe. And people who resonate with that will come to that. And people who don't, that's cool. Right. For me, I'm just like, if you don't believe that, I can't claim to always be right. But if and when that ever changes, here it is. Right. And so that's really my perspective right now is that while that might alienate some people, it also will attract other people, and that's what we're aiming for, right? It's hard to find a message everyone that doesn't alienate anyone,
Yes.
right? So and when you find a message that won't alienate anyone, you usually just have silence, and even then, right? So we want to find something that rather than attracts the most amount of people, something that I believe in and is palatable to other people.
Makes perfect sense. Outside of hot drinks and push-ups, what do you like doing?
I like spending time with family, right? I spend time with family and friends. Those are probably my two biggest hobbies, right? So either building hybrid stuff, and by building I mean like either making videos, writing, etc. Or I really like going on walks with my wife, right? That's something I really enjoy. And I do try to keep in mind that it's the saying that you don't know what you have until it's gone. I don't want to wait till something's gone for me to miss it, right? So I think that some of the things that people might pursue that I might pursue, right? So I'm trying to build a business that takes care of people, right? And there's stress involved with like making payroll, make sure everyone's paid and taken care of. Like the people that work with hybrid, a lot of them have their own hopes and dreams. One of them is buying a house, right? And I'll tell you, she's a friend of mine, and in my mind, it's like I'm buying that house. Right. I'm like,
Yeah.
right. Right. So, she's really happy about that, but I'm just like, yeah, cool. That's great. Happy for you, but yeah, that's great. I was like, man, it's hard to say. Like, I kind of wish like we could wait for this for you to buy a house, even though it has nothing to do with me. But I'm just like, I would feel so much better.
I don't think we can buy a house right now. I think we need to wait for a couple of months. And she's like,
I know,
what?
right? So it's like, we're all part of the family. So that it's an interesting situation there. It's an interesting situation. But I try to take things as they come, right?
Do you find the stress of being responsible for other people? Is that something that you can take in your stride, or is it something that you had to adjust to and kind of learn to cope with?
Well, so like I might have like, it's funny because when you get 60-second video of someone, you get a 60-second window into their life and what
Yeah.
they're choosing to present. And through this, we have like an hour-long window or something. And the themes that are in here seems to be like stress and like responsibility. There is that, but there's also a lot of fun, right? So there is something I had to grow into, but it is not something that is actively bogging me down, right? Because I like where, you know, if someone jumps on the ship, you know, like that they add to the forward momentum ideally, right? So that it's not something that is it's something that's always on my mind. It's always present, but it's not. I wouldn't consider that a huge negative in my life. So I did grow into that, but I grew into a lot of things, right? I grew into a lot of things, and I think humans have more capacity for change than we realize sometimes. And even when we think like, I realize this, it's like there's so many things that if we challenge ourselves and push and not push ourselves out of our comfort zone necessarily, but expand it, because there's a lot of things that are uncomfortable that we don't need. Like some people may feel uncomfortable harassing someone, but that's not something where you need to push yourself out of your comfort zone, right? You feel uncomfortable. It's a feature, right? That you feel uncomfortable with
That's
that.
Purpose built.
Right. Purpose built,
Good
right?
software.
But right. But you might feel uncomfortable doing push-ups, whereas that might help you, right? You're like, so you're expanding your zone of comfort where you try and you're like, I actually am comfortable in that, comfortable in that. So that's something that I think we can continue to grow, and that's something that I'm continuing to expand myself.
Let's finish up on your personal fitness journey. So where did fitness start for you?
Oh, so my family was really into like athletics, martial arts, different types of that. Not necessarily like MMA style martial arts. Like there was some of that, and there was that. But then there was also other people that were interested in just like maybe martial arts that people would consider arts for the art form.
Yeah.
So there was even like Tai Chi and things like that, which you know I is not something we usually use for combat nowadays. But so I was really into that and really into fitness in that sense, but I didn't really have an intelligent fitness program, right? So that I just did like push-ups every once in a while, sit-ups every once in a while, a lot of body weight stuff, which is kind of I bring up martial arts because that's kind of ingrained into their culture. And I think up until fairly recently, there were some martial arts schools who taught that lifting weights would make you tight and slow, which is not necessarily true, by the way. There are some ways where you can do it to where you're pretty inflexible and that makes you slow, right? And there's like, you know, plyometrics and things like that. But you can lift weights and still be very fast and agile. So I started into that. And I think around my teens, I was like, hey, I'm going to start doing push-ups every day, right? And this was interesting because we used to watch Hulu at the time. My mom would watch it, and then we'd watch TV shows. And for an hour-long program, there were 4 commercials, and it happened every like 15 minutes or so. So I'm like, interesting. So I'm just gonna do as many push-ups as I can, super slow, you know, super, you know, like precise during those commercial breaks, right? And I would do it was like 25. It wasn't a whole lot, so I was like, interesting, right? Because I like usually you just bang it out, but I'm trying to do like trying to make it as hard as possible for myself. And I'm like, huh, okay, cool. So I would wait for the next commercial break. I would do that. And it would end up being 100. It was 100 push-ups a day because, you know, that was 4 commercial breaks. I'm like, interesting. Cool. Right. And I increased the number. And I got to the point where I was doing 500 push-ups a day, which sounds like a lot, but you just grow into it. Right. And it's not balanced at all. You're just doing push-ups over and over and over again. But I also later on, I was like, well, at some point I was like, I need a more balanced routine. So I'd add in squats and pull-ups every once in a while. But when I was, I think I want to say 19 for some reason, but it was not 19. It was I think I was 22. I bought a couple books on calisthenics. I started reading it, and that's really when I got introduced to the idea of push-ups, pull-ups, squats, but also progressions within those. Yeah. Right. So like wall push-ups, incline push-ups, you know, knee push-ups, one-arm push-ups. You know, the idea of making it easier to harder using variations was really cool to me. I was like, interesting. It was cool to me, not necessarily for myself, because I could do a lot of the progressions, but also I can now teach this to other people in my life who had no interest in going to the gym. So like, I think most people watching this, maybe yourself here, like your mom or someone. Some of them there's no way you can get them to a gym and then like put them on the bench.
Yeah.
It's like you can convince them to do it once for your birthday, and they'll do it. And it's like it'll do literally nothing, right? It's like they'll make them angry at you for a little while. And it's like, see, I went to the gym that one time. And he's like, don't tell me that I never did anything for you, right? But a lot of people, these people were a lot more open to like wall push-ups and stuff. So I was like, interesting. So I can now bring fitness to this like to these people in my life, and that's really when I started learning that, but also wanting to teach it to other people. That's when I started happening. Early 20s.
Very, very cool. Is there anything in particular that you would like to send people to? Anyone that ends up watching this, other than your channel, which I will obviously link to.
Well, I think I'm building a podcast channel called Coffee with Hampton. We have an entrepreneurship channel that I'm exploring called Hybrid Creators, right? And when I say entrepreneurship, I really mean like the style that I've outlined kind of here, right? It's when I talk about social media, marketing, and business, which are things that turn people off, right? But I want to bring it in a way I just want to talk about it to people who want to listen, right? So there's there's some people who are a little bit jaded about business, right? But they might have a little bit of passion. Like, man, I make really good cookies, right? It'd be really cool to spread to other people in town and stuff like that, right? And that compared to like people to like enterprises who want to increase their social media presence, all that. But I'm also just trying to do more and better on Hybrid Calisthenics. I'm writing a book, which I'll talk about in a few months here, releasing an app. But really, like the way I end podcasts is like that's a lot of different things that you can all click on. It's unusual for someone to click on all of those things and go to all of those things. So really, if there was anything that inspired you, or something you liked, or really, I should say, something that made you curious about the podcast, about trying to take steps into your you can start a journey, then I would rather you take those steps, right, than follow any of my links. Because I think that will have a more lasting impact in your life. And that's what happens. It's like when I listen to podcasts, I listen to interviews and stuff, and I think, that's a really cool thing. I'm gonna write it down. And then whether or not it impacts my life is whether or not I act on it.
Yeah.
Right. But if I act, if like, you don't have to do push-ups or anything, just look into it. Be like, it could be like, he started reading that book. He started reading about this. I want to read that book on like automotive engineering. Right. And that might change your life. So like taking those first steps, things that you might be interested in, and you explore, and then later on you reflect. Those can be really cool. I would encourage people to do that or following my stuff.
There we go. Thank you so much for taking time out. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
I know you're busy, and time zones
No, you
are
are too.
impossible. Yeah, we're gonna the sign off is we just wave at the camera and then I cut it. That's literally it. So ready?
Cool.
Bye bye.
Bye.